Okay, welcome back to podcast number 2 of the Cerebellum Podcast. So, when you're listening to this, it is 2025. So, happy New Year to everyone. I hope it's already a better year than 2024 in just these first few days. I'm definitely looking forward to 2025. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be the same, but also a lot of things that are going to be different. With Cerebellum, with my life, I'm graduating from college, knock on wood. So that will be very, very exciting. And I'll be out in what they call the real world. So what we're going to be talking about today is goal setting. Obviously, when you're listening to this, you've already hopefully set some goals for yourself for this new year. But if you haven't, or if you want to just fine tune your goals that you have already, we're going to be walking through a 3-step process that you can use not only for your health, right, your fitness, in terms of your weight and things like that, but also in terms of literally anything. So there's a 3-step process to how I make goals and how I recommend other people to make their goals that will help you to not only be able to really just make good goals, but to follow them. That's one of the most important things. Like, I think most people make some sort of New Year's resolution, whether it's, a full out plan of this is what they're going to do, maybe for to make more money or to lose weight or whatever it is. Some people make just they might just say, oh, well, I'm just going to do something a little bit different in my life. Wherever you are on that spectrum, which is most people, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. You can use these 3 steps in order to make really, really good goals for your health or for whatever else going into next year. So let's get right into it. Number 1, where you are. So where you are, what does that mean? Well, it means in order to go somewhere, you need to identify where you are. If you want to make a change, you need to understand where you are at. So number 1, where you are. What does this mean? So if you were talking about your health and we're talking about maybe, you want to improve your 5K time. Well, first of all, you need to understand what is your 5K time right now. So for your goals, think about what are the most important things that I want to change going into 2025. List out 3 of those things for your health. So it could be weight loss. It could be, your cardiovascular ability, like your ability to run, your ability to bike for stamina or for speed. It could be things like I want to improve my, if you're a nerd like me and you like to look at the metrics and things like that for your biomarkers, it could be I want to, reduce my cholesterol levels, or I want to, reduce my, hemoglobin A1C, or whatever it is. You need to identify where you are. So think of 3 things that are really, really important to you that you want to change. That's first. Now, with those 3 things, you need to identify what are the metrics for those things. So if you're talking about weight loss, right? Well, the easy metric for that is, my weight. Okay, where am I at right now? So let's just say you're at 200 pounds. Or I'm at 200 pounds. Or maybe one of your goals is I want to lose weight, but I also most specifically want to lose body fat. So you might look at your body fat percentage. If you want to gain muscle, you might look at your lean muscle mass, and all these things you can look at through a DEXA scan. So if you want to improve your weight, then let's just say you're at 200 pounds. Cool, so that's number 1. Where you are. Number 2 is you need to identify where you want to be. So these steps so far probably sound really simple. It's like, yeah, okay. If I want to get from one place to the other, you just have to identify where is point A and where is point B. It is simple. That's exactly what it is. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy and that most people will do it. So number 1, where you are, metrics. Knowing exactly what those metrics are for the 3 things that you want to change. It doesn't have to be 3 things, but for most people, that's realistic. So, number 2, where you want to be. Now that you know the exact metrics for those things that you want to change, where you're at right now, you need to identify, where do I want to be? I think it's important not only to think about where do I want to be this next year, but where do I want to be in, say, 3 years or 10 years or even like 20, 30 years from now. So a good way of thinking about this, and something that I do, is I think about, okay, well, where do I want to be this year? Where do I want to be in 3 years? And then where do I want to be in 10 years in terms of my own health? And a really, really good way of mapping that out is actually not going in the direction that I just said it, but instead going in reverse order. So first of all, identifying where do I want to be with those 3 metrics in 10 years? Where do I want them to be in 3 years? And then 1 year. Because if you do 10 years first, then you can just work backwards. Make sense? Cool. So first of all, where you are, what those metrics are for you right now. Number 2, where you want to be with those metrics. So, maybe you're 200 pounds and you're like, you know what? In 10 years, I want to be steady at like 185 pounds, but I want it to be more muscle. So my second metric is going to be my body fat percentage. And then my third metric is going to be my muscle mass. So number 1, weight. Number 2, body fat percentage. And number 3 is your muscle mass, your lean muscle mass, which, like I said, you can all get with a DEXA scan. And so if you have those 3 metrics and you know exactly where you are, then you can calculate where you want to be. So if in 10 years you want to be at 185 and say you want to drop your body fat percentage from like 25% to maybe like, I don't know, 10% or whatever it is, 12%, whatever's realistic for you, then you start thinking about, okay, well, where do I need to be in 3 years, right? Where do I want to be in 1 year, right? What's my lean muscle mass right now? Maybe you're 200 pounds and your lean muscle mass is 140 pounds. But in order to get to 10% body fat at 185 pounds, you're going to need to get that lean muscle mass to at least 160 pounds, 165 potentially. So you're going to need to make those changes and figure that out. But this all sort of sounds like simple, but also complex at the same time. And so what I urge you to do is don't fret too much about the stuff in 10 years, 3 years, right? This has to be somewhat unrealistic or seem unrealistic because it's so far out in the future. And that's okay. So what you want to do is identify where you want to be 10 years and then work backwards. Okay, if I want to be here in 10 years, where do I need to be in 3 years? Right? An easy way to usually just calculate that is think about, okay, well, where do I want to be in 10 years? And then just divide it by 3, whatever that number is that you're doing, that metric is. And then the same exact thing for 1 year. Okay, where do I want to be in 1 year in order to get to my 3 year, in order to get to my 10 year, in order to get to my 30, whatever it is, right? And just working backwards. Now, this sounds like a lot of work, but I promise you, it's one of those things that like, once you get started, you just don't want to stop. But the biggest thing is just getting started on this. So I'd really recommend that you just put down, if it doesn't matter if the year's already started, right? It really is just a number. It doesn't matter if the year's already started. Just take out an hour and a half of sometime this week to just think about where I am, think about those 3 metrics that I want to improve, and then know those metrics. And then number 2 is where I want to be 10 years, 3 years, 1 year. Cool. That's where I want to be. And like I said, starting with 10 years and then working backwards. Okay, cool. Then the third is, how do you get there? So the third thing is, how do you get there? Now, this is where people are like, this is where people usually just fall off. Because they're like, well, it's so exciting to talk about, oh my gosh, the emotional thing, the happiness, the excitement, the ambition of like 10 years. Oh my gosh, I could be at 10% body fat and I could be 20 pounds heavier in terms of muscle and I could be running this and I could be doing these events and I could feel a lot more energized. But it's super hard to just make the plan, right? And that's why we do what we do, is because we take that responsibility and that decision fatigue from you and create that plan with you. so that you have that. You don't have to worry about it, and you know it's 100% good to go from a professional. So number 3 is how to get there. So you know exactly where you want to be. You know exactly where you are. It's really just big number minus smaller number over your workouts. That's a simple equation. That is a simple equation. It is big number minus small number over your workouts. What do I mean by that? So let's just say if you are trying to improve your lifts, this is a great formula for trying to improve your lifts. Let's say that you want to increase your bench press from, say, 150 to 200 pounds, and you want to do that in 3 years. Okay? Now, let's think about what's realistic for you in terms of working out. You don't have to work out 5 times a week, 6 times a week, sometimes even 4 times a week to get from 150 pounds to 200 pounds in 3 years for your bench press. You don't have to do that. You can do 3 times a week if it's efficient. So think about, okay, well, what is the big number there? The big number is 200 pounds. That's where I want to be. Okay, so what we're going to do is take that big number, 200, minus the smaller number, 150. That's where we're at right now. 200 minus 50. Okay, so I know I need to get 50 pounds more. Now, it's all divided over the number of workouts that you're doing. So think about this. Let's say, on average, you work out 4 times a week, and you do that for 50 weeks out of the year because things happen. So that's 200 workouts per year. So if you have 200 workouts and you want to, per year, and you, in 3 years, want to get to 200 pounds in terms of bench press, all you do is 200 times 3, because 200 is the number of workouts that you're doing per year, times 3, so that's 3 years of workouts, is 600 workouts, which is that's a lot. So 600 workouts. Now, that's the number that you're going to be dividing. So the big number, which was 200 pounds bench press, minus the smaller number, which is 150 pounds bench press, over 600. That is how many pounds you basically need to improve by each workout. Now, that number is tiny. And now you're sort of thinking about this and you're like, oh my gosh. Well, let's think about that math, right? Let's ask Siri, actually. What is 50 divided by 600? So if, let's just say you're bench pressing, or you were trying to improve your bench, every time you went into the gym, which I don't recommend you do, but if you were trying to do that, then all you would need to do is improve the pound by 0.08 each time. Now, let's just say you're bench pressing maybe twice a week, okay? So if you're bench pressing twice a week, then it's very simple. You just multiply that by 2. So instead of it being, instead of it being 600 workouts, actually you just divide it by 2, so it's 300 workouts because you're doing it only twice a week instead of 4 times a week. So you'd actually only need to improve every single time by 0.16 pounds to get to your number. That's it. And once you start to figure out those types of numbers, then you're like, oh, okay, well, if I only need to really improve 0.16 times 0.16 pounds every time I go and bench press, well, now it seems a lot more manageable. Now I can make process goals. So let's give you another example, because I know that was a lot of math and that was a bit complicated. But the big thing here is you want to take the big number minus the small number. So where you want to be minus where you are right now, divided by number of workouts, if you want to do some sort of lifting or running goal. Now, let's just say you want to do a weight loss goal, because a lot of people do, especially around New Year's. So if you want to do a weight loss goal, you're going to do essentially the same formula. Big number minus small number divided by days. So instead of workouts, you just do days. So big number minus small number over days. Okay, cool. So let's say you are 200 pounds and you want to get down to 160. And you want to do that this year. Well, it's quite simple. All you do, big number minus smaller number is what? That's 200 minus 160 is 40 divided by the number of days. So what is that? 40 divided by 365. Hold on, let me just do this math. 40 divided by 365. So that's approximately 0.1 pounds per day. If you wanted to lose 40 pounds, that is 0.1 pounds per day, or about 3/4 of a pound each week. So now you know, okay, great. I have my outcome goal of in 1 year, I want to lose this amount of weight, 40 pounds. I've got that. Now I can start making what we call process goals. And this is really, really important. And this is where most people screw up, because they get where I want to be and they know where they're at right now, but they don't have how they're going to get there, the process goals. So let's take that example. Let's say you want to go from 200 pounds to 160. Cool. So if you want to go from 200 pounds to 160, we already know the difference is 40 pounds. And we know that if you just lose 0.1 pounds every single day for the year, you are going to get there, which is about 3/4 of a pound every single week. Now you can be like, okay, well, if I'm at 200 pounds, where do I need to be by next week? Well, I know I need to be about 199. And then the next week, about 198.5. Then the next week, 197 point, whatever it is, right? And then you can make those process goals. And it's the main thing with this is motivation. Because most of you, and I'm telling this from experience, most of us are going to lose that motivation come February, if we haven't even lost it by then. And the reason that we lose that motivation is because we don't have clear process goals and they're not exciting. Cool. So that's process goals. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set process goals for each month. And then you're going to want to set process goals for each week. Now, this might seem like a lot. And it does take some time, honestly. This might take you, if this is your first time sort of doing this sort of thing, where you're figuring out where you are, where you want to be, and then how you're going to get there, it might take you actually a few more hours. So it might take you 2 hours. It probably won't take you 3 hours, but it would take you a little bit longer than, say, an hour. So you really want to take this time out because it's really, really important that you do know exactly where you want to be. Okay, cool. So now you have your outcome goals and you know what your process goals are now for, say, weight loss or lifting or whatever it is, whatever you want to hit. Cool. So now you need to make sure that you've narrowed down from 1 year to, okay, where do I need to be by this month? Okay, where do I need to be by this week? Right? In terms of pounds or in terms of lifts or in terms of whatever it is, right? That's where I need to be. Now, the last thing in terms of goals, to narrow it down and make sure there's the nail in the coffin, you're good to go, is once you have your process goals, now you need your ultra process goals. You might say, Josh, this is getting a bit much. Yeah, it is getting a bit much. But guess what? This is what I do, and this is what I love to do, and this is why people pay me to do what I do, because you don't want to do it. Or most people don't want to do it. But I love this stuff. I get obsessed about this stuff. And so the ultra process goals are what you're going to do basically on a daily basis. Okay, now I've got where I want to be in 3 years. I've got where I want to be in 1 year. I even got where I want to be in 10 years, hypothetically. But in terms of this 1 year, where do I need to be in the months? Where do I need to be in the weeks? Now the ultra process goals are where do I need to be in terms of days? Now, we're not going to look at weight. We're not going to look at lifts and those metrics. We're not going to use the same metrics that we use for the process and the outcome goals. We're actually going to use different ones. So if you know that you need to lose 3/4 of a pound every single week, well, we're not going to just say, okay, well, you need to lose 0.1 pounds every single day, and that's going to be your ultra process goal. No, that's not what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is instead, well, if you need to lose 3/4 of a pound, that means you probably need to be eating about 300 to 400 calories in a deficit every single day. So, for you, you can just look this up online, do a little, they're called TDEE, still stands for Total Daily Energy Expenditure Calculator. And I know this sounds like a lot, but you got this. I believe in you. It's really not that difficult once you get down to it. Total Daily Energy Expenditure Calculator. And this will show you exactly, and this is free, this is online, this is everywhere, Total Daily Energy Expenditure Calculator, TDEE. This is going to tell you exactly how many calories you burn on a daily basis. So let's just say on a daily basis, you burn 2,000 calories, right? 2,000 calories, including your activity, including you just being alive, right? Your BMR, all that sort of stuff. All you need to do is say, okay, well, my ultra processed goals is to eat 300 to 400 calories under that. And that's my ultra processed goal. Now, you don't necessarily need to track those ultra processed goals. It's good to just know, hey, did I hit that or not? But that way, your goal, your New Year's resolution, isn't just some big idea that you are like, oh, I hope I get there. But now you have an exact plan of how to get there. So going back to our 3 steps. So first of all, understanding where you are. What are my metrics right now for those 3 things that I want to change? And if you have only just one thing or maybe 2 things, that's totally fine. That's totally fine, because then you're going to hyper-focus on those things. That's totally fine. What are my 3 metrics? Then number 2 is where you want to be. Well, where do you want to be with those 3 metrics, right? Like what's a broad idea of where I want to be with those 3 metrics, like in 10 years? What's a broad idea of where I want to be with those in 3 years? What's a better idea of where I want to be with those in 1 year? And then you make your process goals. Well, okay, if I know I need to be, if I know I want to gain, say 12 pounds of muscle this year, I know I need to gain 1 pound of muscle per month. And if I need to gain 1 pound of muscle per month, then I need to be eating about 100, 200 calories over my maintenance. And that's an ultra processed goal. That's a daily thing. So that's a lot. That's a lot. And you might want to go back and you might want to listen to this again. And maybe you want to write down some notes, because it's going to be very, very important that you do this. And like I said, people make mistakes. I've tried New Year's resolutions before, and if I mess it up and it's just it's not super detailed, or I'm not keeping myself accountable with an accountability partner, then sometimes it can just be it can just go to crap, as they say, and that's totally fine. And if that's you and that's happened to you before, and you're like, well, why should I try this? Well, why wouldn't you try this? This is what has worked for me. This has worked for many other people. And at the end of the day, if these goals are important enough to you, which they should be, right? I'm not telling you that you need to go on a weight loss one. It could be whatever's personal or important to you. If these goals are important enough to you, then you need to make sure you hit them. So do this. Give it a go. You'll be fine. And just remember these 3 key takeaways. So where you are, where you want to be, and how you're going to get there. If you have those 3 things, and if you narrow them down from outcome goals, the big ones, the process goals, the moderate ones, and then the ultra process ones, to the daily things, then you'll be good to go. I promise. You got that. The motivation will be there. Then with motivation, there was a study that was done in 2011, and it basically looked at, how likely are people to do their New Year's resolutions. And they looked at 92% of people, just if they make a New Year's resolution, will fail. 92%, which is a big number. 92%. Now, if you make a plan, only 50% of those people, went down from 92 to 50% of those people will fail. Then, if you have a third-party accountability, like if you have third-party accountability, like someone else who's there, who's guiding you, who's just pushing you, who's keeping you accountable, and most people are being like, well, I don't need accountability. Like, I'm my own person. Absolutely your own person. But everybody has an accountability partner. Every successful person has an accountability partner. If you think of some of the best businesses in the world, the top leaders in those businesses usually have some sort of coach. If you think about people like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they all had coaches, right? They had many coaches, because it's not only about how can I make sure that I'm doing my stuff and I'm not falling off the wagon, but it's also about how can I've got so much responsibility and I've got so much stress going on in my own life. I don't want to have to worry about this. Let me just give all the stress, all the decision fatigue to someone else. And that's exactly what a coach is for, and that's exactly what we do. So if you follow these steps and you get some sort of accountability partner, the study said that it would only be 10% of people would fail. So 90% of people would actually pull through, and actually might be 95%, thinking about it now. Either way, at least 90% of people will make it if you make a plan, make a detailed plan like we did right here, and then get some sort of third-party accountability. If your goal is to be there for your kids, to be able to play with them, go outside, go on hikes with them. If your goal is to, become a better basketball player. If your goal is to lose some weight, maybe gain some muscle. And the reason that you want to do that is because maybe you want to look a little bit better, feel a little bit more confident. Well, how important is that confidence to you? Right? Like, where could that take you? Well, that could lead you to making more money. That could lead you to finding your wife. That could lead you to a whole bunch of things, right? If you're looking to improve your overall longevity and be there for your kids, like, how important is that to you? For most people, that's very, very important. So if you want these goals to last, why wouldn't you do the thing that's most likely going to get you there? Which, like I said, is a plan and third-party accountability. So all of that together is how I set goals, how people that we work with set goals, and how I'd recommend you try setting goals. If you have any questions about this, I would love to answer any questions that you have when I've got time. So just to recap, finally, got number 1, where you are. Finding those metrics of those 1 to 3 things that are really, really important to you. Then number 2 is where you want to be. So where do you want to be with those metrics in, 10 years, 3 years, 1 year? And then how are you going to get there? So going from those outcome goals of where you want to be with those metrics to actually making a plan for it. So where do I want to be in terms of these next few months for the year? Where do I want to be? Those are process goals. Where do I want to be in these weeks? Process goals. And then where do I want to be on a daily basis, which are ultra process goals. So I hope that's helpful to you. That is going to wrap up our second episode of the Cerebellum Podcast. And if you have any questions with this, I would love to answer them when I have the time. So apologies if I don't get back to them immediately. So if you have any questions, if there's any topics in the next few weeks that you'd like me to consider looking over and doing a podcast about, absolutely put those in the comments or message us on social media, and I will do my best to put those in as well. That will wrap up our podcast for today. Got another podcast coming out next week, so stay tuned for that. And I hope you guys have a great new year and just a great day in general. All right, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.